everyone. Welcome to another episode of Inside Gophers Nation, the official podcast of Gophers Nation of the On3 Network. My name is Callaghan-Croley, the publisher of Gophers Nation, covering Minnesota Golden Gophers athletics. We're back at it today, previewing Minnesota's Big Ten clash on Saturday night in Columbus against the number one Ohio State Buckeyes, an important Week 6 matchup for both teams. But before we get into today's show, do me a favor. If you're not already a subscriber of Gophers Nation, head over to gophersnation.com and sign up today. If you sign up today, start for $1 your first week and get a complimentary year of The Athletic included with your membership. It's a deal you're not going to find anywhere else. It's a tremendous deal. Get all your Golden Gophers news on the recruiting show, on the field of play, and everywhere in between with Gophers Nation. And then head over to The Athletic and take advantage of the world-class coverage of professional sports that they offer. Plus, by subscribing to Gophers Nation today, you will also get to take advantage of our own world-class team of writers, include On3's Pete Nakos, Andy Staples, Ari Wasserman, and Brad McMurphy, plus many others. Plus, access to Steve Wiltfong, Adam Gorney, Greg Smith, Sam Spiegelman, Joe Tipton, and Hayes Fawcett over at Rivals. It's a tremendous deal. It is well worth your money if you're not just a Minnesota Golden Gophers fan, but a fan of college football and college basketball as a whole. It is a deal that you cannot miss. So if you're not subscribed already, head over to gophersnation.com, sign up today. Sign up today, start for $1 your first week, and get a complimentary year of The Athletic included with your membership. But let's get into today's game, or this weekend's game, shall we? Minnesota, a 24.5 point underdog to the Ohio State Buckeyes. Over-under here set at 44.5 points. So Vegas not expecting a very high-scoring game here. Minnesota, I think by the 24-point spread, 44.5 point total. That puts it about a 34.5 points to 10 points for Minnesota, 34 to 10.5 for whatever you want in favor of Ohio State. And that's understandable. This is a Minnesota offense that has, been good but not elite this year, averaging 33.5 points per game, 405 yards of total offense. It's been a good offense. I think, obviously, we know those numbers are a little inflated by their performance against Northwestern State in Week 2, but this is still a quality offense from the Golden Gophers so far this year. The Buckeyes offense also very good. It's not maybe the explosive offense that we would usually see out of an Ohio State team. 36.2 points per game this year, 445 total yards of offense against Power 4 opponents this year. Just 38 points in 2 games. So it's not like this is a overly dominant Ohio State offense, despite the talent that they have. It's still a very good one. It's one that could definitely win a national championship, but not necessarily one that is going to go out there week in and week out and put up 50 points against Big Ten level of competition. But what does that Ohio State offense look like? Let's dive into it right there, because this is still an offense that is going to be dangerous against the Gophers this upcoming weekend, and it's one that I'm concerned about, especially through the air. I mean, let's just look at it the last 2 games for Minnesota. 279 passing yards allowed to California, and 249 passing yards last week to Rutgers. Those are 2 back-to-back defensive performances through the air that were just not up to standard for Minnesota. 5 passing touchdowns allowed in those 2 games. If that trend continues for the Golden Gophers, especially this week against Ohio State, it is going to serve as a problem. Maybe against teams like Purdue and Iowa and Northwestern, plus Wisconsin this season, maybe though it doesn't affect those games, but you still have games this season remaining against quality passing teams in Nebraska, Michigan State, and Oregon. So, I mean, this is a trend that is concerning through the last 2 weeks, and one that this week against the Buckeyes that is going to be very important to watch for. So, but let's talk more about this Buckeyes offense in general, led by first-year coordinator Brian Hardline, who's been also the program's wide receiver coach since 2018. Through 4 games, like we said, top 40 scoring offense this year, averaging 36.2 points and 445.8 yards of offense per game. Like we also said, not a ton of success against Power 4 defenses this season, scoring just 14 points against Texas in Week 1 and 24 points against Washington this past weekend. From a play calling standpoint, Buckeyes favor the run game slightly, averaging about 34 rushing attempts per game to about 27 passing attempts per game. Very good on third down, converting at a 50% rate this year. Fourth down, they're also 50% for convert on 3 of 6 attempts. At quarterback this season for the Buckeyes is former 5-star quarterback Julian Sayin, off to a great start this year in 4 games. 78% completion percentage on 99 attempts, 987 passing yards, 10 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So he has thrown at least one interception he's thrown one interception against Grambling, 2 against Ohio, but against Texas and Washington, no interceptions. The Buckeyes this year also did lose a fumble, so 4 turnovers in 4 games, averaging about 1 per game, obviously. But saying super impressive, like I said. What has been notable about the passing attack this year for the Buckeyes is that they love the short game. Of 99 passing attempts this year, 67 for Sayin have come either behind the line of scrimmage or within 9 yards. Only 17 passes have gone from between 10 and 19 yards, and only 9 passing attempts of 20 plus yards. So, 67 are within 9 yards, and then just 24 are 10 plus yards this season. Now, when they are targeting the deep ball this year, especially on 20 yards, throws of 20 plus yards, Sayin has been perfect. 9 for 9, 394 yards and 6 touchdowns. But the Buckeyes love the short game. They're going to throw a lot of their passes within 10 yards. They're going to, and a little bit in that 10 to 20 yard range. They're not going to take a ton of deep shots. They're only going to take about 2 deep shots per game. Of course, if more are there to be taken, they will be aggressive in doing so. But in general, they're just taking about 2 true deep shots per game with Julian Sayin, and a lot of their passes have been on the shorter side. So I do think that could help Minnesota in this game. I do wonder if guys like John Nestor and Zaquan Bryan are going to be able to handle Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Brandon Innes in this game for 4 quarters. Not to mention, tight end Max Clare is also a really, really good tight end. So the Gophers linebackers are going to have to be up to par in this game as well. Going off that, Ohio State will utilize play options quite a bit. About 43% of their dropbacks this season have been play action plays. They've been very efficient on those, 35 of 43 for 478 yards. Now, when we go into the specifics of this Ohio State passing attack, the names, I already mentioned them. Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, and Brandon Innes. Smith, the best wide receiver in the country, maybe the best player in the country this season. 28 receptions for 396 yards and 4 touchdowns in 4 games, averaging 99 yards per game. It feels like it's been a quiet start to the season for him, but that's actually an improvement on his yards per game total from last year of 82.2 yards per game. But last week against Washington, Jeremiah Smith, 8 for 81 and a touchdown. He had 153 yards against Ohio, 119 against Grambling, and 43 against Texas earlier this season. He's going to be the primary target for Julian Sayin this, and that's not surprising at all. He had about 34% of all targets or all passing attempts by Julian Sayin are towards Jeremiah Smith. He has 35 targets this year, and we already mentioned the stats: 28 receptions. When Sayin throws his way, he's very efficient. When he's not throwing Jeremiah Smith's way, it's usually going to go to Carnell Tate. Apologies, who has 15 receptions for 252 yards this season and 3 touchdowns. Tate's receiving about 17% of all targets this season. Smith notably has been, going back to Smith quickly, notably a lot of his attempts have come either behind the line of scrimmage or within 9 yards. Total of 23 attempts or 23 targets of his total 35 have done so. Now, when being targeted 10 yards down the field or more, he has 7 receptions for 226 yards and 3 touchdowns on just 12 targets. So, it's Jeremiah Smith. We know what he can do. We already said it. He's the best wide receiver in the country, maybe the best player in the country overall. He's going to be dangerous no matter where Ohio State's throwing the ball to him. But it is worth knowing he's not necessarily a guy that Ohio State's going to try to force the ball downfield towards throughout the course of the game. Apologies, have a tickle in my throat. But Carnell Tate, on the other hand, is a little bit more of a wide receiver where the ball is going to be spread around a little bit more. Behind the line of scrimmage or within 9 yards, 7 attempts this season on top, and then he has he has 11 targets on. I'm messing this up. He has, of his 18 targets, 11 have been between the line, either behind the line of scrimmage or within 9 yards, and 7 have been 10 plus yards downfield. Of those 10 plus targets downfield, 5 receptions, 153 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Cardinal Tate does not get nearly the attention that Jeremiah Smith gets from the media, just because of Jeremiah Smith's dominance. But Tate is a very good wide receiver in his own right, and somebody that the Gophers are going to have to be very aware of on Saturday throughout this game. Now, behind Smith and Tate, no other Buckeye receiving target really is terribly involved. Nobody else has more than 9 targets this season, and only 3 have over 5 targets. The next name really to know is tight end Max Clare, 9 targets this year, 6 receptions for 74 yards. And Brandon Innes, the third wide receiver of the group, 8 receptions for 71 yards and 9 targets this season as well. Innes, notably, however, is the Buckeyes' most dangerous threat when it comes to yards after the catch. He's averaging 8 yards after the catch per reception this season. So, I mean, you look at that, 8 receptions. He's averaging 8 yards after the catch per reception. I mean, that's 64 yards after the catch and just 8 receptions this year. That is highly, highly impressive out of Innes. The Gophers going to be, have to be very aware of keeping him in front of them this game, or he is going to create a lot of damage. Beyond Innes, though, not a terribly big team after the catch. Jeremiah Smith is averaging 5.9 yards after the catch. Cardinal Tate averaging 5.2 yards after the catch. The offensive line for Ohio State in the pass blocking this year been very good in its pass protection. Just 19 pressures allowed, resulting in 6 quarterback hurries, and just really 2 sacks, but only one of those are really on the offensive line. Philip Daniels was the one who allowed that one offensive line allowed sack this season. That does create an interesting matchup against a Minnesota defensive line this season that has been very good at getting pressure on the quarterback. Through 4 games, 57 total pressures in 4 games, about 14 pressures per game. They already have 14 sacks on the season. Anthony Smith has been very dominant. And then, Devin Williams has been very good again, pressure. Rushawn Lawrence has been great from the inside in the pass rush. It is a very intriguing pass rush so far for Minnesota. While the pass coverage has not been great, the pass rush definitely has been on the stronger side compared to years past. But this will be the stiffest competition that they face by far. Cal's offensive line was okay. Rutgers has an offensive line that has done the job so far this season, but isn't a dominant offensive line. This is by far the biggest test for the Golden Gophers, and I'm really interested to see how Anthony Smith performs in this game. But they're also going to need a Carter Mentz or a Jackson Howard to step up in this game. Carter Mentz, I think, has been fantastic when on the field. He has 4 pressures this season, resulting in 3 hurries and a sack already. Jackson Howard has 3 pressures, 1 hurry, and 1 sack this year in about an additional 35 snaps this season. But the Gophers are going to need Carter Mentz or Jackson Howard to step up in this game. They're going to need Devin Eastern and Rushawn Lawrence, as well as Jalen Rogan-Redding to step up on the inside. So I'm going to be very intrigued to see how Minnesota's front 7 or defensive line in general handles this Ohio State offensive line that has been very good throughout the course of the season. Julian Sain is a very smart quarterback out behind them. He's going to get the ball out fast. He's going to throw it away when needed. He's not going to take any stupid sacks in this game, if I had to guess. So very, very intriguing there to watch. It's going to be, if Minnesota's going to have any chance to pull off an upset, the defensive line has to perform at a high level in this game against the pass and, of course, against the run, which we should get into here. Ohio State's rushing attack, maybe not as dominant as the rushing attack in years past. Still averaging 5.3 yards per carry, led by true freshman Bo Jackson, not that Bo Jackson, but Bo Jackson, 35 attempts, 297 yards, 8.5 yards per carry, and a touchdown last week against Washington. Had a solid performance with 17 carries for 80 yards and 4.7 yards per carry. His numbers are inflated by terrific performances against Grambling and Ohio, where he averaged over 12 yards per carry against each. But, again, level of competition is important there to note. That being said, Bo Jackson is the leading rusher. Behind him, C.J. Donaldson, a West Virginia transfer, and James Peoples. Donaldson averaging 4.5 yards per carry, Peoples 4.9 yards per carry. Altogether, it's a good backfield, but it's just not the backfield that we saw last year, perhaps, with guys like Travion Harrison and Quinshawn Juggins leading the way. James Peoples is part of that group as well, but they don't have the dynamic duo at the top this year. Bo Jackson's good. I don't know if he's great just yet, but he's very good already. And then C.J. Donaldson and James Peoples are both very good running backs, just not overly dominant. So it's not a dominant rush attack. It's a rush attack that's going to try to get you 3.5 to 5 yards per carry on a regular basis, and then they're going to look to break off a 15-plus yard run. Every now and then. This season, they have 8 carries of 15-plus yards. Bo Jackson has 5 of those carries. I mean, Bo Jackson is the running back that makes this rushing attack go so far this season. He's going to be the one that the Gophers have to be, the most careful about when he's on the field. This is a Minnesota rushing attack, however, that run defense, however, that last weekend against Rutgers, I know that the average is only 3.3 yards per game, but you look at what Antoine Raymond did. He had 26 carries for 161 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I am concerned about how this defense, kind of as a whole, is matching up against this Ohio State offense after last week. The pass defense over the last 2 weeks has not been good against talented, but also much less talented passing offenses in California and Rutgers compared to Ohio State. And last weekend's Rutgers is Antoine Raymond, the best running back they have yet to face, the best running back they have faced this season. They struggled. It's not a great omen when you're going up against a highly, highly talented Ohio State offense this weekend in Columbus. So I am worried in general about how this Minnesota defense will handle this Ohio State offense. And it will be very interesting to watch, see if the trend continues for Minnesota or if they're able to, step up when the lights are the brightest. But in general, with the Ohio State rushing attack, they're going to run a lot of their runs are going to be gap scheme based runs, about 60%. They're going to target the inside runs a lot of A and B gap runs where they've been highly successful this year. They have success running off the right end towards the right tackle and tight end, but don't have nearly the level of success on the left side, so expect a lot of that as well in this game. A lot towards the rush end side. But again, I think the big thing is they're going to have a lot of 3, 4, 5 yard runs, but they're going to break off 1 or 2 runs, maybe 3 or 4 in this game of 15 plus yards. That makes up a huge chunk of what is going to be their rushing yards in this game. I think the one noticeable trend about the running backs for Ohio State, just not forcing a lot of missed tackles. Of their 134 carries as a whole this season for Ohio State, just 13 missed tackles. 6 of those are from Bo Jackson. Again, Bo Jackson is the running back that makes this rushing attack go. But overall, Buckeyes are forcing missed tackles in just 9.7% of all their rushing attempts this season. For comparison, last season, they forced missed tackles on 21% of all rushing attempts. So overall, what do I think about this matchup for Ohio State's offense against Minnesota's defense? Quite frankly, I don't love it. I've already said I'm worried about the pass coverage against this Ohio State wide receiver room. The Gophers have struggled the last 2 weekends against good passing attacks, but not nearly as talented as Ohio State's. And they struggled with Antoine Raymond last week. And Raymond's a very good running back, but again, he's not Bo Jackson, and he's not this Ohio State running back room nor did he have the offensive line that the Buckeyes have blocking for him. This one's going to come down to the secondary, in my opinion, for Minnesota to keep it close. Zaquan Bryant has been, thrusted into being a starting cornerback this season, and the results early on have not been great. 13 receptions on 17 targets, 174 yards allowed, and a touchdown. According to PFF, the quarterbacks are posting an NFL equivalent of a passer rate of 128.1 when targeting Bryant. John Nestor this year has been really good. 8 for 16, 50 yards allowed, two interceptions, 3 pass breakups. Quarterbacks just a 17.2 NFL passer rate. Kerry Brown and Coy Parrish have been up and down this season. Brown has struggled at times. Quarterbacks are 10 of 14 when targeting him, 121 yards, 1 touchdown allowed. Coy bounced back last week, but when quarterbacks are thrown his way, not nearly as scary as last year. 8 for 9, 80 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Quarterbacks with a 143.3 passer rate against Coy this season. We'll see what happens. Last week he did step it up against Rutgers defensively, and we didn't see him on offense. So perhaps the Gophers are taking a little bit off his plate now and letting him focus back on what he does best, which is defense and special teams. Because that performance against Cal on defense and special teams was obviously a night to forget for Coy. Flipping to the other side, this Minnesota offense against this Buckeyes defense. Probably won't go as deep into this one, but defensively, a very good defense for State, allowing just 5.5 points per game, number 1 defense in the country when it comes to scoring. 229.3 yards of total offense allowed per game, only 132 passing yards allowed, 97 rushing yards allowed each per game so far. Last week against Washington held the Huskies, who prior to last week were performing really well offensively. Huskies had 38, 70, and 59 points over their first 3 games. For last week, Ohio State held the Huskies just to 6 points. Washington did complete 18 to 23 passing attempts, but just for 173 yards and averages 7.5 yards per attempt. And on the ground, the Huskies technically finished 30 for 61 and averaged just 2 yards per carry, but notably, running back Jonah Coleman did have 13 carries for 70 yards, 5.4 yards per carry. Washington was hit hard by sacks in this game. I think Ohio State had 6 sacks. Overall, the Ohio State defense is terrific under Matt Patricia. They are going to, disguise a lot of looks. They're going to be creative in how they attack this Minnesota offense. They're going to try to confuse Drake Lindsey throughout the course of the day. And on top of that, they're going to be willing to bring pressures. I believe it's about a 30% blitz rate for Ohio State this year. So Drake Lindsey is going to have to be, he's going to have to be very good at the line of scrimmage on Saturday night in order to try to stop this Ohio State pass rush, which has been ridiculous this season from, being in the backfield all day. And I am concerned about the offensive line in this game for Minnesota before we get into it. Just going up against this Ohio State pass rush. And specifically, I'm concerned about the right side of the offensive line. According to Pro Football Focus this season, the Golden Gophers have allowed 33 total pass pressures. Of those 33, 19 have come from the right side with Dylan Ray at right tackle, Marcellus Marshall at right guard. Dylan Ray is doing very good in the run blocking, so he's making up for it a little bit. Marshall, on the other hand, has been struggling in the pass blocking and the run blocking. He hasn't allowed a sack yet, but he's allowed a ton of pressure to come off that right side. And I think it's, to a degree, also pulling down Dylan Ray's performance. Ray's not been perfect, but I think Marcellus Marshall being as much of a weakness as he has been this season has really affected Ray. I am concerned about how that right side of the offensive line is going to hold up against an Ohio State pass rush that's very dangerous. Ray does seem to struggle with a little bit of your more faster and bigger pass rushers, which Ohio State has a handful of. So I am concerned about that. Nathan Roy this season has not been perfect on the left side. He's been solid, though. 6 pressures. He has a lot of 2 sacks. Again, defensive ends are going to be big for Ohio State in this one. The tackles need to play the best game they've played all season. And I'm not too worried about Greg Johnson or Ashton Beers in the middle there. But, again, the right side of that offensive line I'm very much concerned about for the Gophers in this game against this Ohio State defense. There's really not much to talk about with the Ohio State defense in particular. I mean, I'll mention a couple key guys here quickly. On the defense, Caden Curry, Caden McDonald, Will Smith Jr., Zion Grady, C.J. Hicks are all guys to know on the defensive line. This defense, and Kenyatta Jackson Jr. The defensive line, the defense for Ohio State in general, 72 pressures so far this season, and 14 sacks. They have been completely dominant week in and week out. Linebacker Arvell Reese Jr., very, very versatile, can do almost a little bit of everything at a very high level, very key piece of the Matt Patricia's defense. Sonny Styles is also very, very good at linebacker for the Buckeyes. In the secondary, you got Davison Igbinison, who's been very good. Lorenzo Styles Jr. at safety. Jermaine Matthews, Jalen McClain, and then Caleb McDowell, of course, the best safety in the country. It's a very good Ohio State pass rush. There's no being around the bush on that. Sorry, pass rush. Very good Ohio State secondary. No being around the bush on that one. I'm very, very curious to see how the Minnesota wide receivers are going to go up against this Ohio State secondary because, like we said with the Minnesota defense against the Ohio State offense, this is by far the most talented defense and secondary that this Minnesota passing attack is going to go up against this week. So very, very interesting to see how that matchup goes. But again, I don't like the offense, Ohio State offense against the Minnesota defense. I don't love this matchup. I don't love it because of the trenches for the most part. Minnesota has struggled to run the ball a lot this season, especially without Darius Taylor. If Darius Taylor cannot go this week, I'm not sure the Gophers are going to have much success at all against this Ohio State front seven that has been dominant against the rush this season. Again, last week, Washington's lead back, Jonah Coleman, did average 5 yards per carry, but Jonah Coleman is a better running back right now than Fame Ajaboy or Cam Davis. So there is concern there. If they can move the ball on the ground, it may set up this Ohio State defense to tee off on this Minnesota passing attack, especially on that right side with Marcellus Marshall and Dylan Ray. Plus, that could set up the secondary for Ohio State to have a big night as well. So very much a matchup that I do not like for the Golden Gophers. So what's that mean? Well, I think Minnesota fans know which way I'm going to go in this prediction. I think Minnesota fans know which way this game is probably going to go. That's in the way of Ohio State. I like the spread here for Ohio State at 24.5 points. I think that's about right. I think I'm going to take Minnesota to cover that spread, but not by much. Right now, I'm looking at this game to be about Ohio State 31, Minnesota 13, so about an 18-point spread. I have it right now. I think Minnesota is going to find a way to get into the end zone at least once, and I think they'll get 2 field goals in this game as well. But I just don't see enough avenues for Minnesota to move the ball enough successfully against Ohio State's defense. And then I do worry about the passing attack against this Minnesota defense overall. And I do worry after last week how well Antoine Raymond was able to run the ball if Minnesota is going to be able to slow down Bo Jackson, C.J. Donaldson, and James Peoples enough in this game to keep Ohio State off the field. I don't think Ohio State's going to have a huge day offensively, but I think they're going to get the job done offensively, to say the least, and just not going to be Minnesota's day in my opinion. So give me Ohio State in this one, 31 to 13. I'm not a big believer in moral victories, but for this game, I'm going to really be watching to see how long Minnesota is able to stay in this one competitively. By competitively, I mean, can they stay within 10 to 14 points? We saw last week they came back from 2 scores against Rutgers. I don't think this is a Minnesota offense that's really built to come back from multiple scores on a routine basis, especially not like against a team like against Ohio State. So how long can Minnesota stay within 10 to 14 points? And how the defense is the defense just giving up big long drive after long drive, or are they having successful drives and then it's an explosive play that Ohio State scores on or uses to get a touchdown? That's what I'm going to be curious about to see how competitive Minnesota can be in this game. I don't expect a Minnesota victory, but if they can keep this game within 7 to 14 points for 2-3 quarters, and then Ohio State pulls away at the end, I think that's something to build upon. If this is a 24-10 game going in the third quarter, I think that's if you're Minnesota, you'll take that, and then maybe Ohio State scores late to really put out of reach. Even a 20-10, a 17-10, 17-10, 20-10, whatever you want to call it, somewhere in that range, I think would be successful for Minnesota. Something to hang your hat on, build towards the future. Again, not a big believer in moral victories, but I think for Minnesota, if you're a Minnesota fan, you're looking more so this week to see how long you can be competitive in a game against a top-ranked Ohio State team than necessarily coming out with victory. If Minnesota comes out with a victory, great, but definitely should not be the expectation going into this game from a fan point of view or from a media point of view, in my opinion. So that's how I view this week's Ohio State-Minnesota game. I think it's going to be a game where just too much talent for Ohio State, for Minnesota to handle. And yeah, just not sure if I trust the defense right now to make enough stops in this one to give the offense enough opportunities to score. And on the flip side, this Ohio State defense has just been so dominant. I'm not sure that Minnesota, with potentially no Darius Taylor and a redshirt freshman quarterback, is going to be able to be the ones to crack the code here. Perhaps I'm wrong, but we'll have to wait and see till tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. Central Time to see what the Golden Gophers can do against this top-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes. Until then, everybody, thank you for listening to an episode of Inside Gophers Nation. Be sure to head over to gophersnation.com to get all the latest preview of this matchup and, of course, all our game day coverage tomorrow as Minnesota takes on number 1 Ohio State. Until next time, have a good one. Enjoy the game, and we'll talk to you all real soon.